Om Ariva Ratanabao Samhatra Yatra Najaha Sha Ishon Chos Charite Buhuda Jayamanaha Om Mechepa Jayatha Atmana Swasti Vaha Paraya Tamasaha Adastat Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. There in the heart, where all the subtle nerve endings meet, like the spokes of a chariot wheel at the hub, abides the Atman, ever stationary but becoming manifold. Meditate upon that self as Om, and Godspeed to you in crossing over to the farthest shore beyond all darkness. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. For there, beyond that darkness, shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us. May that Brahman sustain us, and may that Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. We welcome you here with a full house and all of those watching online to this second class in a very interesting subject, which in English translates into Walker of the Skies. When you have an English phrase like that that's intriguing, as it is, then people tend to rush to it, comment on it. I'm not saying en masse, but amongst the few hundred to 1,000 people who watch these SRV classes, that most of them we hear about after the fact, have looked back on them. And those who week to week follow closely, want to hear it more in a direct transmission style, in real time, as we would say in the recording industry, then they tend to send in their comments or not, depending on how inviting or attracting or intriguing the subject was. And I heard from several of those people this last week about how much they liked the teachings on the Walker of the Skies, because I gave away the secret earlier, the teaching that we're really talking about space. And space becomes known to people when they breathe. If they don't breathe consciously, then they don't know space, or they only know one kind of space, physical. And then when they become aware that they're breathing in a physical space, and I'm not saying just with oxygen, but they're actually, their life force is keeping them alive by breathing. Then they're beginning to look towards desha and kala, space and time, as principles that can be inspected or should be inspected. Back to Swami Vivekananda saying, I came to the West and I found out they didn't know anything about prana. I think Jesus was the same way with the fishermen and in his time. And, you'll have to have an internal life, but in order to do that, you're going to have to discover the prana in the fish, in the huts, in the act of procreation with your wife and family, in the rivers that are flowing, in the nets that you're casting, in the actions you're doing, in the objects that your senses are taking in. There's a life force there that you live by that's in the food. So it's not actually the food only that keeps you alive. Maybe that is necessary for the physical body, but for the physical body to subsist and for a spiritual life to begin, then you're going to have to take up prana, which is taking up space, basically. Akasha and energy, basically, are the two main things that they teach at a rudimentary level in Indian philosophy. And we're not aware of our breath, and we're not aware of the space around us very much. when I say that, I mean walking the skies. I mean you have 5 different kinds of space that you go to. Probably for most of us, 4. Um, that is, when we dream, we go to subtler space. And when we're in deep sleep, we go to a causal space. Of course, when we're awake, we go to the physical space. And then when we get illumined or enlightened or wake up our consciousness, then we go to this 5th space, like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa did. That is, he called it the Chid Akasha or the Maha Akasha. And he likened it to a goldfish being released from a bowl into a lake, finally, after going around in circles under a little bridge its whole existence, maybe many times, because that's the many lifetimes people are living in lack of the awareness that they're coming back again and again. So that's a kind of ignorance, not to know that you are repeating actions that are repeating karma that repeats lifetimes. And the whole thing is supported by prana. You might say out of those whole 5 spaces that you walk, the physical space, the mental space, the intelligent space, and the ultimate space can be known to you, but the prana is the most subtle of all of them. It's so in your face. It's so immediate that it's one of the great tactics of a teacher to bring a novitiate student or a beginning student to consciousness, is to say, how many times did you breathe today? Or how many of those breaths were you aware of? Did you count them? Because, if you count them, like on your hand, or you put it together with the mantra, which is a superior breathing exercise, because people can breathe in the Hatha Yoga style all the time, do a kind of basic pranayama, and it's not netting them anything. But you have to put the breath together with the philosophy, and then put it together with the mantra, and then say it over your food. And that's the very first thing that would appear on this chart we looked at. That's a real condensed and beautiful way of saying how precious spiritual life is, that you have to start out with awareness. It has to be around your food, but in order for it to be around your food, you would probably have to be aware of prana, of life force in the food. You'd be better off knowing that, and knowing it deeper than just saying this will keep me alive, because that leads to gathering consciousness, right? Oh, we were once apes and monkeys and so forth, and when we were primeval man, then we began to need to gather things, so we had to store things up for a winter and all that. So the whole thing's railing against the transcendence of suffering and duality, and playing up that idea that I was a body, or I am a body. The most rudimentary teaching in spiritual life is you're not the body. So when that's understood, then the next thing that you would encounter would be this prana. You don't live by physical matter alone. You live by subtle ether. And that's the next space that you want to walk, and you want to do it consciously. So the Upanishad says it's the second best way to bring people's awareness to their true self, towards their true self. The first best way would be to have been born already aware of it. That is, these people that have mastered the prana, they exit the last body aware of what death is, that it's illusory, that it's temporary, that just marks, a bardo between one state of existence and the other state of existence. And you don't want to fall into the misconception that those are 2 different states of existence, that existence is always one homogeneous thing. And therefore, Om Drishyam Pratitam Pravilapayan San, as we chat from Shankara and the Upanishads and so forth, is that it's just one indivisible mass of pure conscious awareness. And it appears to be divided by the mind-ego complex that's vibrating at different levels of that one. It's like an ocean with different layers, different strata, or even Earth has different strata. And you're going to have to dig to find out how old the Earth is, as it were. So you're going to have to do a little digging into beyond the physical, into the life force, to know that you're not a body, you're not Earth and water, fire, air, and ether either. But this ether of the five elements, that leads you to a discovery of different skies, as we're talking about here. So you started out, as you said here, with the proper diet. And then after that, I would say it was easy to assume a posture then. You didn't want to force posture, as they're doing, and making it the all in all of yoga, a big mistake. And it's been called down by great souls, this penchant for physical yoga only. So no need to go further into that, particularly if you're wanting to know something about the true reason why you breathe, what true life is, and how that can lead you then to an illumined mind, because your mind is still tossed between good and bad, pleasure, pain, life and death, form and formlessness, bondage and liberation. That's called dualities. And the mind is constantly struck by them every day. And it causes it doubt about its true nature being seamless and transcendent and perfect. And that's the kind of doubt you want to do away with, the great doubt or the great fear. Great fear is death. The great doubt is maybe I'm not one with the Lord. The people come in thinking that. And they leave thinking that I'm now dying and I never got the grace of the Lord. But the fact is that they are the Lord and the grace is in them. And there never was any other way to it. You're that thou art. And you just have to wake up and recognize that fact. So I'm saying this in context of easy posture, you may have to practice a little bit if you're particularly a Western chair yogi. You say, ever sat and spread your legs, basically, in this lotus position. So you haven't opened up the base of the physical spine even, what to speak of the subtle spine, because the chakras are not in the physical spine, they're in the subtle spine, which is here. It's in the thought of the spine. The worlds are there. Kings of heaven are within is what that means. So if you're a Western chair kind of yogi then, and that's all you can manage because of past lifetimes of samskara of sitting like that with legs under, crossed, not crossed, and so forth, or crossed, then you're going to have to become aware that to sit in an easy posture means not slouching, so that the breath is crimped. See, but you're going to have to straighten the spine, not too straight, because that will pinch the nerves in the spine. But they say almost like a vulture leans over. Tibetan Buddhists say the meditation is like, shoulders are back, but the chin is set forward. So it's not like this, where you can feel the discomfort from that. There's that kind of discomfort, and there's this kind of discomfort. But right in between that, as usual, the middle path is that easy posture we're talking about here. And that will help in control of the prana. The prana won't be crimped in the nadis. So where did I mention the nadis last in range of your hearing? At the beginning of class. Om Ara Eva Ratanabao means chariot, and spokes of the wheel. This hundreds of thousands of nadis that we learned about when? 2-3 Sundays ago, when we took up the Ksharika Upanishad, the knife that cuts through the lower nadis, right? Cuts through the blockages in the lower nadis, even cuts some of them away. That was at the feet, and then at the knees, and then at the thighs, and then at the heart, neck. So those nadis, prana is the god of prana. I said earlier to someone in an answer to an email question, they would be very upset if he thought that you thought he was impure, or if you thought he was crimped somehow, or that he wasn't flowing. He's like consciousness. He's always flowing, but your nadis are not open to him flowing. So you can't put the blame on prana without insulting the god of prana, who's never crimped, always flowing, always alive. And then you're not living up to his boon, the blessing upon you of life force, right? So that's why people slump, they forget their true nature. People don't breathe, they forget their true nature. That's basic, but it's very important. And some forms of yoga, the physically based yoga, can take this and make it the all and everything. But what we want to do is have this walker of the skies experience open to us because we do it anyway. We do it, we're walking one sky right now when we move around the physical earth. And even when we shoot rockets into space and put monkeys up there and then men, sometimes seems to be no difference between the two. But when we shoot them up into space, they're still walking outer space. It's even called outer space. So that's the Burloka, that's the world, that's the physical universe, that's matter. It's all matter. You talk about a billion suns, still all in the physical universe. But then when you start to think, if you concentrate the thoughts, you're walking a subtle sky of the mind. And you're using this prana to do it. It's called psychic prana at that point, right? So focus, concentration would be that first best thing. Later, the second best thing would be, oh, I have to become aware of my life force so that I can get focused. And that's mythology, right? That's like coming in behind the eight ball into life. And don't think your parents or your ancestors are going to help you with this. Whoever did that for you was the guru that came along and taught you, breathe, sit, straighten, think, concentrate. And this wasn't on the physical universe alone to do that, because they're pretty good at having you concentrate on those things to make a mean living and so forth. But they want you to concentrate on the next level of space. So you're walking this space all the time. So you should do it consciously is the point. And that's what happens when the prana begins to awaken there and you can control it. And then you detach from sense objects because you can. Before that, you couldn't. So that became known as attachment, right? And attachment will lead to frustration, and frustration will lead to loss of control and so forth. You can describe it in Krishna's 9 levels of road to ruination, it's called in the Bhagavad Gita, or you can put it in Vasishtha's way of talking about it, or you can put it in the Father of Yoga's way of talking about it, that there are 5 hells that you fall into at that point. They're called kileshas in Buddhism. So anyway, you probably never thought that I can detach from sense objects, because some of them are giving me a hard time. See, some of them it's not like sense objects is all about pleasure, right? Some sense objects, they show themselves up to you. Oh, I don't want to think of that object. So there are some very negative sense objects out there that people don't equate to the teaching of detaching from sense objects. They usually think, oh, I'm too attached to that because of pleasure. But there are plenty of sense objects that show themselves up in your life that cause you pain. They're pain-bearing obstacles, according to the Father of Yoga. So the control of prana allows you to detach from both kinds of objects, because you can control the senses through the prana. And if it's not controlled, the senses are like 5 wild horses with no charioteer. That's the image. So when I say Ratanabhau, Ara Eva Ratanabhau Samhatra Yatra Najaha, that beautiful sloka out of the Upanishads means that you have to walk through the nadis. You have to open the nadis so you can course through them like an undammed river. And prana can flow, and then consciousness you can realize that consciousness is ever free, never bound at that point when the prana teaches you that that's it. The prana will teach, the psychic prana will then get the attention of Mahashakti. And she'll look at you and say, oh, you want to walk the skies? Come with me. And who's doing that? Queen Chudala is doing that in our story. Who's not doing it? King Shikidwaj is not doing it. Not very well, not very consciously. He's got the aspiration, but he doesn't have the ability yet. So read your Yoga Vasishtha and that beautiful story we're talking about. But anyway, I'm working up to my point in this second class of this Walker of the Sky series. The next bubble there is purification of body-mind mechanism. You couldn't do that before either because you didn't have your prana under control. And then rise above the six passions was also impossible to get yourself free of lust and anger. We were talking yesterday about that after satsang. What do they say about Sri Ramakrishna that's so really amazing is that when he came to earth, he conquered lust and anger. They always put that in accordance with his name in the Gospel of Ramakrishna and the great master. And whenever the devotees talk about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa Dev, they always put that there. So it's what it really says is that the rest of us has not conquered lust and anger. Those are two very difficult things to get over. And even in his teaching, he told you, you'll never really conquer them. They'll always be there, but you can diminish them, keep them at a minimum. So it's like the ego, keep all of that at a minimum so you can see this wider picture or walk the skies without impediment. And be who you are, consciousness, and quit thinking habitually that I'm this restricted body in time and space, in one space, that is. It's interesting about time and space. In space, you want to know many. In time, you want to know one, right? The eternal moment, that's the kind of time you want to know about. But as far as space goes, broaden it out. I want to visit them all. I want to walk through them like she's doing down here. She reaches the Sushumna, she walks the skies, and then she meets other beings who long ago or at the present moment are walking the skies too. And she gets communion with them and they bless her and she blesses them. It's like meeting with a guru. There's a transmission and a receiver. And then they both share each other's being, see, and the transmission happens in terms of wisdom, for instance, and devotion too. Rise above the six passions, and then that's where I'm stopping today, as far as what I want to show you first. In Yoga Vasishtha, there's another story that's very beautiful, that's about Arjuna. And so it's interesting that all of a sudden he's teaching Ram, the young Ram, in Yoga Vasishtha. That is, Lord Vasishtha is teaching the young Ram. Then he starts talking about Arjuna, who is Krishna's disciple later in time. So you have to take the Indian scriptures this way, as that they are eternal. If you say, well, Krishna came after Ram, not if you look at it from the standpoint of cycles of time. So basically, you've got these beings existing eternally throughout cycles of time. So one doesn't come before the other necessarily when you take that view. It's like Sri Ramakrishna saying they're off, and the racers start going around the track in a circle. So one's ahead and the others are behind, but so you're looking at it and all of a sudden the one behind makes a move and passes everyone else while you look away. And you look back and all of a sudden the one who is at the end is now in the leading, is leading. So he comes all the way around and overtakes the others. He's the fastest runner. So spiritual growth is much like that. It may appear like people are behind and ahead, but some people fall behind to help others and to lead others who are not as fast. So this is how the avatars work too. They want to help the fallen and the lowly ones, maybe as much or even more than they want to help those who are already on their way. See, I've fried that fish already. Now I have to go fry other fish. You see, so that guru has helped that soul to get, and that soul will now find its way to enlightenment because of the boost it got. But now there's others who don't have that boost, who need help. So that's one of the means here of teachings of the Yoga Vasishtha and the meaning of Arjuna. So you can see here, it's from the story of Arjuna, this chart we're showing you right now, is it? And well, we can come back and look at the Walker of the Skies, but it's all in context to that. And it's in context to this right here, purification of body-mind mechanism. So that's called the Purastika body. So you can see here Lord Krishna, young Lord Krishna in the background. And you can see on the upper left hand, the Purastika body. And what it says about it is that it's fivefold, basically. And, eightfold really, Ashtika means eight. But if you look at the components of it, it's the ego, the mind, the intelligence, the senses, and the body. Well, of course, the senses are one thing, but they're five. Same with the prana. It's one thing, but it takes five forms. So what you're doing here to purify senses wouldn't be like, brushing your teeth or cleaning out your ears with a Q-tip or taking your eye out of the socket and polishing it like a pirate and putting it back in. Basically, purification means finding their origin. If you find that the origins are connected back to the mind, then the senses will be pure or impure, as the case may be. Because if the mind is not pure and you follow the senses back to the impure mind, you'll find out that's why they're defective, why they're not seeing Brahman, why they're not hearing Brahman, why they're not touching Brahman, why they're not tasting Brahman. They've fallen into limitation, and the prana probably is not flowing in them very well, or it's flowing only on the level of physical, so that it gives me pleasure. And let's make sure we put pain in there too. It gives me pleasure and pain, my senses. And so the prana isn't being used as psychic prana. So if you find the origins of the senses, you'll find that you can purify them, like attaching them to the mind. What's this mean, actually? And I think this is probably the best teaching about the senses in any scripture or philosophical system I've ever come about, according to the origin of the senses. Because we know basically Kapila talks about air, earth, fire, water, ether, right? Or put it in a better order, ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And those are the outmost five elements called the pancha elements. Pancha Maha Bhutas is the Sanskrit for that. And we trace those inward to the five senses, right? Earth goes to smell, water goes to taste, fire goes to sight, touch goes to, and so forth. That's a teaching in Samkhya Yoga. So that's a very beautiful way of listing the senses. But when Vasishtha gets a hold of this teaching, he talks about the Purastika body, because let's look at his quote here at the bottom left. When the various elements of this subtle body are purified, it is then that the precious Kundalini Shakti loves to sport through this Purastika body. So it's a beautiful thing, basically, because she won't. We used to hear about Sri Ramakrishna say about if a woman sees a spider crawl under her shoe, she won't put it on, even after the husband chases the spider outside, wipes out the shoe, shows that there's no spider in it. She's still averse to putting on that shoe. That's what Mother Kundalini is like to an impure body, a person with impure body, mind, and senses. She doesn't want to put it on. You see? That's the simplest way of putting it in Sri Ramakrishna's way of saying, but she does want to put it on if it's been purified, and she can sport through it marvelously. Just look at how she sported through the Paramahamsa, through Thakur. The Lord means Thakur. They call Sri Ramakrishna the Lord. So she sported fully and consciously and blissfully through him at all times, right? So it's a beautiful quote to bring up right now from Lord Vasishtha, is that we want to purify these mechanisms, starting with food, posture, energy, and finally thought, so that she will come and reveal herself to us as our very self. It's part of self-realization. Sometimes Mother doesn't get mentioned in it because she's so subtle. But like I said, it's the best teaching of all in accordance to the origin of the senses, because this is how it happens. So let's start with deha first, the body. That's one element of the fivefold body, right? The body itself. Deha means the physical body. So how does it come about? By brooding on matter and objects. So your body comes into being by some form of consciousness that's looking on to the physical universe and saying, I'd like to go there. I'd like to experience that. I want to own that. I want to possess that. I want to act there, and I want to reap there. It's like your ancestors. So take it this way. Your ancestors are looking onto the physical world saying, I want to go back there. Most of them. This is called Kala Chakra. And you're mixed up with the ancestors, then you're going to come back with them, and you're going to come back as their father, mother, grandfather, and then you're going to pass away, take on another body, come back as their child or grandchild. This is what happens in the Kala Chakra all the time, according to the greatest thinkers, Indian and Buddhist. Well, Buddhism is India, really. So the body comes about by brooding. See, so think of it this way. I was once just floating in the cosmic mother's womb. And I was free and happy there. I had a womb with a view, as I like to quip sometimes. And so I didn't have to, worry about the problems of a physical world, being born, living, dying, making a living, having family, and transcending and all of that. All of a sudden, I got swept into this earth in a physical body. And because I started brooding on senses and objects like they did, they're constantly thinking about wealth. Holy Mother said that. All they think about when they come here is wealth. And they never ask for anything higher at all, she said. So what can I do? If they want that, I'll give it to them. See, they can have it. This is a direct quote from her. She's like throwing her hands up and saying, they've come here with all this potential for bliss and peace and love and life and compassion and but what do they end up doing? Amassing wealth. That's the whole, it's not only the whole end and aim of the ancestors, it's also the end and aim of the demigods, which are above the ancestors. As far as walking space, walkers of the skies, let's just start talking in that language. There's a multi-level, multi-vibrational level of consciousness in us. It's one, and it's homogeneous, yes, but it vibrates at different levels according to the teachings, according to the living beings who are partaking of it. See, so if you're partaking of it at the level of the ancestors and you follow their lead, say, well, why are they looking there? Oh, it's an earth. Why do they want to go there? Oh, I see. They can get lots of things, you see, and pleasure is their main. They're overlooking the pain there, as Lord Buddha told them. But they're really looking towards, having more enjoyment, more pleasure with objects. So let's go back. Why Queen Chudala can do this, what she's doing. King Shikajwaja is a king of a palace with lots of duties and lots of pleasures. But Queen Chudala is like, oh, I'm beyond this. So there's much deeper places to go. It's like Sixon, our founder, once told me toward the end of his life, founder of SRV, there are many things better to be than a human being, Babaji. There are many things to be that are better than a human being. So it was an interesting statement I heard and thought about for a long time, still thinking about it. So the body then is coming about by brooding. This is Vasishtha's way of telling you how the body originates. Because if you go to the world and worldly people, it came about because of the union of male and female, sperm and ova, and so forth. You've got all of the outer mechanics of that nicely laid out for you. Unless you believe in storks and chimneys. But if you have some sort of physical knowledge, then you have that. But space, walking the skies, how did you walk from heaven to earth? Through these nadis, through these hundreds and thousands of nadis, consciousness manifested itself. This is what the slokas that I'm having a lot of you memorize from the Upanishads are telling you. I've put out at least 5 or 6 of those that talk about the nadis to memorize so that they become, a part of your thinking consciousness. Didn't we just chant that? May Brahman become a part of our thinking consciousness and illumine it? Because pleasure is certainly not illumined it so far. Pain hasn't illumined it. Food hasn't illumined it. Breathing hasn't illumined it. It's got to go deeper. Well, how about the 5 senses? What's the skinny on that? It says, in awareness of the 5 elements. So when the five senses see what Earth has in store for them, say if we're taking that standpoint, as we're looking from the Petries, you know what Petries are, right? They're ancestors. That's one of the levels of beings. You know, human beings are Nara, and Petries are ancestors, and Devas are gods. So if we're looking at that level of different stations of beings who are looking out upon the earth, then here's where you have this view of the five senses um, becoming aware of the five elements. So if I become aware of earth, then I want to smell it. If I become aware of water, I want to taste it. If I become, and so forth. If I become aware of fire, I want to see it, see light. So these are root desires. That they're not necessarily negative desires either. Everyone follows this process. Tibetan Buddhism is a good way of following this kind of thinking with their own language and their own philosophy, but very much similar to what Vasishtha is telling here. How about the intellect itself, the buddhi? Let's go actually in a better order. Let's take manas next. How does manas come? Through dual contemplation of itself. That's one of my favorites. It's like if a great soul was born and said, you know, I and my father are one, or I am one with Brahman, you know, then duality doesn't have a chance to get in to the thinking process. Everything dual or multiple or diverse will get behind me. You see, that soul will not believe in multiplicity or variety or diversity as being a reality. That's a reflection of the reality only. This is about as much as they will give it. So they will come in with a non-dual mind, and they'll keep that, like my teacher did for 90 years in his life. I met the man. So he always had non-duality as the strand that was running through everything. And when you lived with him for a while, you visited him in his ashram, you saw that that's the way he lived. There's no other way to live but that. And you heard it in his teachings, Advaita Vedanta. So I like this one very well about the mind. Is that if we put it on shoe on the other foot, then basically you've got people coming into the world via the dual mind, manas, good old manas, and it's seeking pleasure through senses and objects and elements, right? But it's getting pain through them too. So it's not learning very quickly that if I adopt a stance of duality, I'm going to have to take the good with the bad, pleasure with pain, death with life, and eternal life might just escape my attention. And I'm on this cycle with my ancestors where I never understand what Jesus meant when he said eternal life, or what the ancient rishis of India meant when they uttered the word Brahman. I'll go through these. These are for you to contemplate, but I have done my contemplation on this chart and this story of Arjuna and Yoga Vasishtha because I translated it from into English. So basically, when I did and made these charts for other people to look at, these were the points that I thought were most important. This is the origin of the senses, of the whole body you're talking about here. And it's a totally different view than what you're getting in science and physiology and biology. Because we're looking at the 24 cosmic principles, only really 10 of them are in the outer world. You're a walker of the skies amongst 10 of the 24 cosmic principles when you have only a physical body and senses and 5 elements around you. And that's all you believe in. You won't even give it a chance to believe in anything deeper. This is all I need. Maybe it's all that I can handle right now for most people. So that's a delimitation of a very stark and difficult kind that has to be worked through. Intelligence would come next. I probably should call it intellect here. So basically, via certitude of its own intelligence, the intellect comes into being because it knows that intelligence is its possession. You see. Of course, there's lower intelligence, there's mean intelligence, there's scholastic intelligence, there's different kinds and levels to intelligence. But when you're talking about the fire of intelligence, the fire of yoga, um, the intelligence that's the first compound of consciousness, to quote Swami Vivekananda, that come like a ray coming off the sun. It's just the second, it's closest to the sun, closer than anything else. So intelligence is closer to Brahman than anything else. Who said that? You remember my reading last week? The second thing Queen Chudala said when she talked to her mind, after she had awakened to her Atman, was, it's my intelligence that's been my best friend. Did you hear that last week? So you can see how Lord Vasishtha is teaching his young charge, Ramchandra, at some 14 or 15 years age, and making him get close to his own intelligence. So that's what it means here. By certitude of its own intelligence, the intellect gets formed. See? And think about it. If you don't have a certitude that your intelligence, do you have an intellect? You deny it. I don't know anything, you say. See, I know nothing. I'll never will know anything. I'm worthless. You just go in an entirely opposite way, don't you? So you have to have certitude about the fact that intelligence is shining possession that I have, and by it, I can raise consciousness to a highest level. And there's only one subtler thing than intelligence, and it's not necessarily a positive subtlety, and that's this rascally ego. See, it's the masquerader, it's the pretender, and it wants to take and cover the light of Brahman, and then say that light is mine. It belongs to me and me only. So individuation is its game, and it wants to use the rest of four senses, the rest of the five senses, in that way to manipulate them. So how does it come into being? By belief in its own separate existence. I mean, I'm sorry, this is brilliant. This is just brilliant to look at the senses this way, and the aspects of purastika body in this way. It's a different look than the rest of the world and all other religions have never taken before, see. And it's done by seers who have reflected on this. What is the origin of all this? They weren't just jumping to the chase saying, oh, I'm Brahman, I think I can leave it at that. I don't believe in all this other, that they're in ancestors and enjoyment and attachment. I'll go the renunciate way, which they did in India quite a bit. Not always to the best end either, if it wasn't mature renunciation. But, rather than doing that, they're saying, I'm not satisfied to know that the senses are limited. I want to know where they came from. So that great turn of mind, great turn of intellect, set them on the path to discover the connection. And we'll talk about it next weekend at the seminar, the connection between prana, psychic prana, and mother, Chit Shakti, father of yoga called her. And this is how they walked the skies. This is how they opened the nadis. They purified them first, not by saying, oh, my prana is weak, or my prana is crimped, or my prana doesn't flow. When they came to know the God of prana, he said, none of that is me. I'm just like you, I'm perfect. And then when they decided that they looked at their body-mind mechanism with its five senses and the objects attached to it, he said, that's a defilement. That's a defilement to my nadis. I can't have an eternal life. I can't have samadhi. I can't have the bliss. I can't have the peace that passes all understanding, because my whole system is resisting against that, of having those. It's resisting against them. So when I looked back into the origin of things, I found that it all had to do with my dream, that I dreamed all of these things. And when I looked further than that, I found out that I was the pure knower, actually, that all of this was a product of stunted knowledge in a dream, all the way down to aparavidya. See, basically all the arts and sciences and the mathematics and social studies and history and all the subjects that they force us to learn in the physical body, not even giving us a spiritual origin to things first before they taught us those things, so that we wouldn't have attachment to money and family and things that bound us. I found out that basically this was all just stunted knowledge or skewed knowledge or limited knowledge or lower knowledge, but that the true knowledge was in myself all the time. I am the knower. I am Atman, all abiding. I am Atma Brahma. So Atman then will connect to Brahman, undifferentiated awareness. Enough of differentiation, we see how it works, right? And we can probably finish it up, this walking the skies that Arjuna was taught too by great souls like Vasishtha, by saying that if you fall victim to this without knowing the origins to them, then the dream becomes illusory dream life. Finally, it becomes a form of karma or bondage. After that, that's called karma bandha. After that, samskaras and skandhas, impressions in the mind and composites of expressions in the mind happen. Formation of karma, desire-based impressions in the mind, it says in parens. Due to that, Maya sankalpa takes place. It's much different than atmic sankalpa. It's much more dense, much more dark. So Maya sankalpa says, conjuring up more dream lives in relativity. We'll look at your 12 nidanas in Buddhism and that chain, the links of that chain that go around and round and round, or memorize Swami Vivekananda's poem, Song of the Sannyasin, and find that it drags from birth to death and death to birth. Give up all pleasure, give up all pain, and seek the Atman in you. Now, from different sources, you'll find out that beings whom have influenced Queen Chudla have given out these great teachings for time out of mind. I mean, Vasishtha goes way back. If he's teaching Lord Ram, that's way back in the second yuga, before Krishna. If you want to look at time in that way. False belief in the actuality of the universe in space of time happens when those samskara skandhas form, and you begin engaging in Maya sankalpa. Whole countries have fallen victim to that. In what sky? In this physical sky called the Burloka. I was just writing about it in length today in a book called Matriavatar, the avatar of the goddess, Divine Mother. So this is how Sri Krishna put it here. If you in the gospel, he said, if they live enough lifetimes in ignorance, they'll begin to assume that the world is real. And if they begin to assume the world is real, pretty soon it'll be the world is the only reality. I mean, you'll hear that, you'll see that being thought by very high intellectuals and put in pop songs as lyrics. See, we're just material beings. Someone else will come along and say, no, actually, you're not a material being trying for spiritual experiences. You're a spiritual being down here having worldly experiences. So however way you cut it, you're going to want to open up these nadis in the way. So really, in this class, I'm taking these first 5 things as we went through all of this last week as a review, as a presentation. Now we're coming up to how Vasishtha is teaching Lord Ram about the origin of the 5 senses, which are then the origin of the 5 elements, which are then the content of the of the objects around us. And that's all they know from then on back. So this is going to be a need to purify everything that leads up to a place where you can find a teacher and read the scriptures in the right way. If your prana is flowing, then the teacher is all of a sudden aware that you exist again. It's like you've been hiding from him, maybe for lifetimes. And as soon as you become aware and become qualified, then, oh, I see another one coming. I mean, I read about it in the Gospel of Ramakrishna just yesterday, looking for God blogs, right? Combing it again for God blogs. He said, yeah, when I saw, forget the man's name, Sham, I think. When I saw Sham, I said to Mother, can you attract him to me, please? And then he said, and I saw another person in that vision, and I hope she attracts him to me too. See, so this is what I mean. I mean, it's not hard to believe that they've walked a kind of sky that has reached an omniscient level of witness. I mean, if they've mastered all of this, and they can walk the skies, and if they don't know something, they can find someone who does, and they can be transmitted to them in a dream or in a causal state, you see. This is happening all the time, and we just think, oh, it's kind of fantastic, and I don't know whether to believe it or not, but it's actually going on all around us, even here in the physical space, and of course, particularly when an avatar comes to Earth. We were talking about that yesterday at Satsang and God blogs. Well, this is, you might say, all of this is kind of leading to the definition of avidya. So pretty soon, vivarta, or the belief in the actuality of the universe in space and time, sets in. Say, like the ancestors we just talked about. Oh, there's the earth. I can't take my mind off it. I kind of like heaven, but I really want to go back there. And so this cycle is going on. And they're not inward thinking. They're forward thinking. They're outward thinking in a forward way. That is, they're planning their next lifetime, and you're a part of their plan. Don't you think your parents, well, I hope they did, planned you? Let's have a family would be the general way of saying that. But in India, it's like, let's do some austerities and maybe a better soul will come through. Whatever the case, if you want to look into Manu's code, the code of Manu, of how people had children in the ancient times, much different than now. Nevertheless, it's let's have a family, you see. So souls floating in another space, walking a different sky, can hear that. Oh, there's my opportunity. I'll be born with them. Tibetan Book of the Dead, and others talk about that. Oh, soul looks, sees different couples in the act of making, procreating, and chooses the gender at once, and then chooses the family at once, chooses the parents at once. So God doesn't do this. The stork doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the desire of the soul, and the prana that it can control has everything to do with it. And lack thereof has a lot to do with it too. This is an unconscious birth you're talking about. When there's no control of the prana, it's just random. Thoughts are random, prana is random, birth is random. And you don't know anything from cradle to the grave. My teacher used to say that. The poor souls, they know nothing from the cradle to the grave. And there's avidya at the very bottom. It might say this is all sort of, if it's going in a downward, outward trajectory, then it's the best definition of avidya we've ever had too. Forgetfulness of Atman, Brahman as the only reality comes after believing that the world is the only reality. So what's the Sanskrit for it? It's a famous teaching. Brahman Satya, Jagad Mithya. Brahman is real. Satyam. The world is Mithya, unreal, false. And the world will become false if you put Brahman first. I'm sorry, the world will cease being false when you put the world first. I'm getting tongue-tied. The world will cease being false when you put Brahman first. So never neglect Brahman, Shankara says. And escape this problem of descent into avidya. According to the father of yoga, avidya is the first hell. Ignorance of your true self is the first hell. So we have a whole different reading of what heaven, hell, and earth are in Vedanta and in India. So avidya is first, and then attachment and aversion. Egotism is second, attachment and aversion are third and fourth, and clinging to life would be fifth. These are the five hells. So they're in here, aren't they? They have to do with my choices, my decisions, my desires, or my freedom from those things. And so does heaven. It's the heaven of the ancestors, the heaven of the gods, the heaven of the virajas, the heaven of the Trinity are all skies. And Queen Chudala is walking these now. And she's making swift and rapid progress in it. This is the chart I mentioned several times last week that I wanted to get to show you this level, before we can go on. So the whole thing really is that you can secure a path, preceptor, and scriptural knowledge. And you see people doing that. And if they do it, as I've often said, if they come immediately to guru, preceptor, and initiation mantra, then they've probably done this before in another lifetime. But they didn't do this in another lifetime, you see. So there are different grades of aspirant. So looking at those different levels of detachment, right? Different levels of soul quality that Patanjali puts in his sutras. Well, that's where a lot of this figures in, that up to a certain point, you can accomplish progress in spiritual life. King Shikidwaja is trying to get past. He's already got this if he listens to it. But the Kundalini awakening has not happened to him like it's happened to Queen Chudala. So awaken and worship the Kundalini Shakti. You can't do it unless you've accomplished all this. So this is where we'll pick up next class, which is, by the way, 3 Sundays away. Next Sunday is a part of our seminar called Living a Spiritual Life in Materialistic Times. You're all invited, as my teacher used to say. And the following Sunday, SRV staff is away. So that will be no class that Sunday. But 3 Sundays from now, we'll pick this up about here and some teachings on Kundalini. So then it comes down to, how am I going to spend the rest of this class? Don't worry, I have a way of doing so. And we can finish up this hour or hour and 15 minutes with this very beautiful take out of the Upanishads. In this case, the Akshi Upanishad. It breaks down yoga into seven levels. So they all have to do with walking the sky, because just like Queen Chudala has gone so far in this and is opening up to deeper levels, we'll look back at that in the Walker of the Skies 3 class later. And we probably know that we've assessed that although King Shikidwaja has, and I'm counting on you to go and read that story in Yoga Vasishtha, so you've got better ground under your feet. King Shikidwaja has come far as being a king. He's, like I said last week, both of them are going to priests, Brahmin priests in the castle. They're having holy men wander through the castle and stay with them. The kings used to do that. Like even in more modern times, Vivekananda got asked by the Rajas to stay in castles, if you read his life, even then in the 1800s. So they had a real look towards the sannyasin. Oh, bring that person to the castle, feed him, giving him room, and we want to hear him talk. So, of course, that's an ancient precept that goes way back. So way back is where King Shikidwaja is also following the tradition, even as a king, of having access to scriptures, gurus, and teachings. Path, preceptor, and scriptural knowledge. So farther than that, we don't know how far he's going towards awakening Kundalini through Jnanam. That's its best vehicle. Mother Kundalini loves wisdom because Nahi Jnanena Sadrishyam Pavitram Miha Vidyate, the best purifier in all the worlds, that is, that rids you of ignorance, is wisdom. Sri Krishna says that in the Gita. So we know that she's very much in favor of acquiring these teachings, and so that she can flow upwards. You might also think of it as not only will I become buoyant, but she'll be released to the Sushumna, where Shiva's waiting for her. She wants to merge with Paramashiva. That's her whole purpose. You're going to be very fortunate if you can grab onto her hem of her garment, her sari in this case, and get taken inward and upward to awakening of Kundalini, which Queen Chudala is definitely experiencing in this story. So in that regard, then, walking the skies, this is what an advanced look at what Queen Chudala has done in order to be able to do this level of skywalking. Let's look at it. It'll consume the rest of our time for this class. Akshi Upanishad's Rishi, Akshi means, like Akshatam means third eye. So associated basically with the sixth center and with the Jnana Chakshu, the eye of wisdom, and with Lord Shiva, basically. Akshi Upanishad is a very beautiful description of these breakdown of the 7 stages of yoga. We have breakdown of 6 kinds of limbs of yoga in the Upanishads. We have Patanjali's 8-limb system. And when I found this, in the Akshi Upanishad, I said, well, there's also a 7 stage of yoga that we should look at and see how they have played in time with these great teachings. So here's what happens at the first stage. Perform noble, gentle deeds. And think of Queen Chudala and King Shikidwaja in the palace, serving their subjects and so forth. Perform noble, gentle deeds. Avoid violence and compromise. Purify speech. In affection and love. So that's the careful speech teaching. Serve the virtuous and study scripture. Seek to cross transmigratory life. The first stage is already pretty high, isn't it? Oh, you're cutting too high already, as they say. So basically, you're going to practice yoga. If you come into the universal meaning of yoga, really in any country nowadays, I'd say, is that you're going to have to think that this is the first stage of yoga. Everything that was preliminary to it was a bare minimum of what you had as a definition for true yoga. This is in the Footfalls book too. So if you want to get the Footfall book from SRV, look through all these charts. There's 300 of these. You can follow these classes much more closely if you do so. So we're doing this in accordance with how Walking the Skies is happening, particularly in Queen Chudala's case, right? So the second stage that she would have accomplished in order to do this is called Vichara Bhumika. Bhumika is an inner land. It's like another word for skies, for ether, for space, for lokas, for akashas. So space is really given, unintended, a lot of room in Indian philosophy. As I say, if you become aware of the prana, you're becoming aware of space. That's how I put it. Prana just doesn't mean breath and lungs or, purifying my physical nadis or something. It means space. And so when you breathe, you become aware of space. First, outer space, that is, you become more aware of what's around you, right? Space of food, space of atmosphere, space of a house, space in a temple, space, outer space. You become aware of all sorts of things in outer space. But then you, according to this chart, that we were looking at, the senses expand. Really, apiyantu mamangani vak pranishchakshu shrotamatra balamindriyani cha sarvani is probably the best line in the Upanishads to explain this. May my body experience perfect flow of health. May my life force, prana, flow unimpeded. May my mind and senses expand in their capacity to know Brahman, right? It's what they're saying, it's what's happening here, and it really explains how important these skies are and how we must become master of them again, I should say. If we've lost mastery of them, we have to become master of them again. We have to remaster them. So the second level here that Queen Chudala would have found out as she walked the inner skies, sitting next to King Shikidwaji, who was sitting there trying to get through purification of his own dense nadis still, is that you visit hermitages of ascetics, embrace reclusive life, continually recite the Shastras, as I was just saying. That's why I'm giving you these slokas to memorize so that they stick. Perform meritorious actions only, and hone mature detachment. Again, some very deep levels of vichara. Vichara really means to examine, to inspect. So you want to inspect this next land, this next sky you're going to walk. Because let's face it, when you study a scripture and you're focused, you lose awareness of the outer world, right? That's like a good meditation. So you come out of it and say, where am I? You see, sort of like coming out of deep sleep. And, somebody next to you says, what time is it? Which day is it? Is it morning or evening? So you'll have this complete oblivion to the physical world. So you can do that while you're awake, studying a scripture. You're so engrossed in it. You're so taken up by the wisdom. It's inspiring you so much that you've shut off the outer world and you're in a new sky. So you have to acknowledge this side of yourself in order to master the so-called movement of consciousness, in and out, up and down, like the lunge. You don't believe you breathe? I never thought of it. Okay, first we'll take the in-breath. Puraka. Think about that. You breathe in. Now let's think about holding it. Kumbhaka. Don't breathe out yet. Now let's think about Rechaka, the out breath. You see, this is just so elementary and rudimentary, but it's the only way you can bring people to the fact that they breathe and that there's an inner meaning to the three movements. Attach it to the mantra, like breathe in the Gayatri, hold, breathe out, and then you've got a very powerful practice, a more conscious practice. So I'm just making comment here about when you continually recite the Shastras, and then you're already in another space, and you should know that you're in that space. Once you know that you're in that space, you can return to it, right? If you don't know that you went into that space, you'll forget about ever going back. It's like losing your memory on earth. Where was I born? Who is my family? Who am I? And then the who am I can take on a much deeper ramification. Asansarga is the third level of breakdown of yoga, according to the Akshaya Upanishad. There's where attain non-attachment in stages, comprehend the secret of non-agency, destroy tendency towards sankalpa. If we look back, we'll see that sankalpa was one of those things that by lack of discrimination, we fell into in the dream. It's like a dream. Sankalpa is like I'm dreaming things. And I don't know where their origin are. I'm just calling them up from my mind. They're phenomena that's rising continually. I don't know where they came from. They play a while, they go away, and I don't know anything about the rising and the falling. It's like my breath. I don't know anything about breathing in, holding, and breathing out. I don't know what that means. So you can see how these triputis all connect to each other to help lead consciousness back towards its source, what we're calling here walking the skies. Four is right across the board. That is the storyboard. Sometimes you call these things. Some people call them charts. Some people call them storyboards. That's swapna. Now we know that word really means dream, right? Because sushupti means what? Deep sleep. So you had the waking. These are all happening pretty much in the waking state as you purify the nadis and begin to walk the skies. Now you're taking it into other states of consciousness consciously. It's like, now I know I'm having a dream. You see. Ah, now you're kidding me. I thought I didn't know I was having a dream. Now I know it's a dream. And I also now know that it goes away in deep sleep. Where am I in deep sleep? So the who am I that I was assigning back to my loss of memory becomes the who am I that's now being assigned to recovering my divine memory. See, that's a powerful question, no matter how you cut it. So in Swapna level of yoga, the Rishi of the Akshaya Upanishad says, see through the mind's nescience. We've called that the curtain of nescience before. It's what causes you to forget your ancestors who you came from when you incarnated on earth, if you were caught in this cycle of rebirth. So the curtain of nescience strips all memory from most people. But for the great souls, they'll look at the curtain of nescience and say, here we go, take a deep breath and penetrate it. And they'll wake up saying, I woke up quicker than you did. See, like great souls, Shankar woke up at what, 5 or 6? I mean, can we remember anyone who woke up so quickly as him? So, I mean, woke up to this I am Brahman fact. And he also woke up along the way to knowing all the scriptures. All he had to do is take it up and say, yeah, I know this. Imagine reading a great scripture and saying, this is like the back of my hand. I've done this before. You're having a deja vu on an entirely different level than 60s New Age fun that you were having at a party. See, this deja vu is like, this whole scripture is in me. If you have Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, my teacher, peace and blessings be with him always, if you have him chanting the Gita in Sanskrit and English for 90 years, don't you think he's going to come back next lifetime if he should take another lifetime and pick up the Gita and go, I already know this. So you already know a lot of things that other people had to work, to understand or recover. Each one of us has those things that are really, we need to trace them back to already having known them in a previous lifetime. They've been doing this in India for millennia. They're so much advanced in their acceptance of these skies. Whereas here we are in America, and Europe to a great extent, just preoccupied with one sky. It's really ignoble. It's really demeaning. And to be born in a culture that everyone thinks that way, you're going to want to beat a hasty retreat out of such thinking and awaken spiritually. Take her as Kundalini Ma, as your refuge, and just say, dip me over and over again in the ocean of consciousness, Mother. That's how Sri Ramakrishna put it, until I'm just totally malleable and at your beck and call. I'm totally merged in you. Dip this mind over and over again, like a towel in a lake, he said. And you can affect a lot of progress and good growth and good change with just those devotional moves. But then you get a methodology like this because she wants you to awaken deeply. It's like a child that loves a mother, she loves it back, but a child that loves a mother and has this special knowledge to it, she's going to sweep it off her lap. No, you can't stay on my lap anymore. There are songs about this. As you become a lover of mother, she'll put you in her lap. You'll both have such a great relationship. But if she realizes or she knows that she can transmit the highest wisdom into you, she'll set you aside. Now go and spread this. Spread this wisdom to others. That's your destiny now. That's what the Jnanam is for. So there are 4 yogas, right? Jnanam, wisdom, devotion, bhakti, Jnanam, meditation or raja, and karma, action. One of them is for realization of God. The other three are for the world. If you can get jnanam, then you become an instrument to help others. Krishna says so in the 18th chapter of the Gita. That being who has this highest wisdom and knowledge of this philosophy I'm teaching, he does the most good. He's my favorite, or she is my favorite of all my devotees. The other three, devotion, meditation, and action, are for the world. You see. So one's for realization of God, the other's for the world so that they can realize God. Atmano moksharta jagad ditaya cha is the motto of the Ramakrishna order. For realization of the self first, then the good of the world. So this is why this fourth level, swapna, comes into view. See through the mind's nescience, attain the virtue of same-sidedness, establish duality in non-duality. I like that way that that Upanishad teaches that. It's like you just, I want to transcend duality. Good, bad, pleasure. No, put it into non-duality. You see, you may need it later. Sort of like, I've got a bag here. I'm just going to leave that stuff out there and go away, and I'll never need it again. No, put it back in the bag there, you see, and then walk away with it. Establish it in everything in non-duality. Non-duality means I am Atma Brahma. I am the self in all. So the last one there, come to view the world as a dream. That's why this is called swapna, dream. See this level of yoga. And Vasishtha has a teaching on the was it 14 worlds, 14 skies. In fact, that reminds me I should get that chart out and show it to you 3 Sundays from now. There are like 14 levels, Agyana Bhumikas and Jnana Bhumikas. The first 7 are Agyana. They're all in coming out of ignorance. The 8 through 14 are called Jnana Bhumikas. They're all in knowledge. So the first 7 coming out of ignorance, this is one of them. At one point to come out of ignorance, you realize that this is all non-actual, that this is all change. And you've been told that change doesn't happen in Brahman. So if this is change and Brahman doesn't change, what's my conclusion, right? This must be an illusion. This must be a dream. This must be non-actual. This must be something I have to awaken from. There must be something much higher than this world. I know you're probably saying, of course, or you should be saying that. But we have to attain it, like Queen Chudala is doing. And Lord Vasishtha is telling us how she did it. In order to move in the time remaining to complete this chart, because there's more to say about it, let's go to Sushuptipada, the 5th level of yoga, according to Akshaya Upanishad. Live peacefully in dissolved mind. Practice seeing all as Brahman. Exist in the state of non-duality. Enjoy eternally awake awareness. See, that's what our founder, Lex Hixon, said. I have the insomnia of yoga, he told me once. I have the insomnia of yoga. So this is the ever-awake state in which a man has come to me from a land that never sleeps. Now all my dreams have become radiant meditations. There's a beautiful song in India about that. I can no longer practice formal meditation at dawn and dusk because the sun of her wisdom never rises or sets. It's constant. There's no more day and night in that land. It's just all conscious light. So you can see people have heard this and written songs about it and stotrams and scriptures, whole scriptures on it. Sushuptipada. I'm going through them quickly, but you can look back on these in footfalls and see the chart. And we'll look at deeper into some of these facets. Like I said, it's already reminding me so definitely about the 14 Agyana and Jnana Bhumikas. also in footfalls, and how we should look at that because it has a lot of these points in it that are the same. Well, probably anybody who has been in SRV for even very long is in doubt about the word Jivan Mukta. And it was probably a word that my teacher, again, my guru, used almost in every lecture. In fact, he was telling us, you Americans haven't produced a Jivan Mukta yet. What's keeping you from doing it? I mean, Swami Vivekananda was here in 1893 and early 1900s telling you about it. And here it is, 1980s, 1990s, when he was teaching us, where's the Jivan Mukta? So you can see they're getting a little antsy for us to waken up to this truth and show evidence of realizing it. So here you can see there's more to say in the earlier stages and becomes sparser and sparser. There's only 3 things here to say about Jivan Mukta according to the Aksha Upanishad at the 6th level, 6th stage is abide in fearlessness, see only oneness everywhere, and abide in the stillness of samadhi. So samadhi would be walking the skies at the ultimate level. See, I mean, you'd be high in the skies like her, goodbye forever. It's like Buddha, I'm gone forever. And she was going, bravo, you see, finally somebody became a Jivan Mukta. So all of these easier to understand, but definitely more subtle. And finally, Videha Mukti, the 7th stage, live free of superimpositions, exist beyond conformity with the world, the body, and the Shastras. Well, not so difficult to live beyond conformity with the world and the ancestors and the body and all that, but to go beyond the Shastras, that's a considerable task for people who have been suckled on Jnanam. When they came into this world, they won't forget the Jnanam because they can immediately remember Brahman through the Jnanam. And the scriptures are that, like I said, that much like the back of the palm of your hand. You know it all. But there's a place evidently beyond Jivan Mukta where Videha Mukti kicks in, which is a bodiless kind of level of existence. Because for Jivan Mukta, you have to have a body. And probably even a physical body, you can have Jivan Mukta in a physical body. Otherwise, my teacher wouldn't have been sitting there saying, produce me a Jivan Mukta. Where is he or she? Where is Queen Chudala? Bring her forth. Holy Mother wanted that out of the women. And that's why, although most American women don't know it, she's their very best friend. I'm quoting him. I want them to know, American women, he said, that this isn't about women's rights. She's your very best friend. She's showing you how to get liberated from gender, from rights or from justice or injustice, from the world and its processes. You think you're ever going to teach equality in a world that's thinking in unequal terms? Well, go back here. You abide in oneness, see only oneness everywhere. Before that, practice seeing all as Brahman. Isn't that equality? And haven't you got it in another sky? Have you realized it in a higher level of awareness? Then maybe you brought it back here, if you were fortunate. And it probably wasn't received very well. So they poisoned you or crucified you or whatever they did to you for telling them about it. See? So I hope that this class, because I got really good comments about actually how thrilling the first class was last week when we went through it. I hope this has been as engaging for all of you. And it will be watched in the future too by many other people under this beautiful title of Walking the Skies. And we'll come back in 3 Sundays, put it on your schedule, and we'll have a 3rd class and have some more beautiful things to share about walking the skies. Kripam Kuru Mahadevi Suteshu pranateshu cha charanashraya danena kripamayi namostute. O Mother Supreme, cast thy benign glance upon thy children bowing before thee anon. Sprinkle in their hearts arid a drop of love to enjoy peace. Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadguru Pado Padme Toye Shritva Pranamami Mahor Mahor Pranamami Mahor Mahor. O Ramakrishna, teacher of all, O Sharda, goddess divine, bosom holding those lotus feet, salutations to both ever be of mine. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Hari Om. Om